hear that well. I don't know. It's a little bit. I don't want to turn them all up, but hello, hello, hello. Okay, that's a little bit better, I think. Let me get back in the frame of the camera. Can you see me now? Okay. So I have Jimmy Hengy here. So he's running for Palm Coast City Council District 2. It's going to be interesting. Just jumped in the race, get to know him a little bit. So keep your hat on. I'm ready, Mark.
You are now tuned in to Today with Pastor Jay on WNZF News Radio, where we discuss inspiring and informative news. And now here's your host, Pastor Geraldine Denny.
Good morning, good morning. Welcome to Today with Pastor Jay on WNZF News Radio. I'm Pastor Geraldine Denny, and today we're talking about the future of Palm Coast. So few issues impact residents more directly than growth, infrastructure, taxes, flooding, housing, and jobs. And Palm Coast continues to experience tremendous growth, but that growth comes with some difficult questions. Like, how should the city expand? Can our roads and utilities keep up? What should be done about flooding? How do we attract quality jobs? And what role should artificial intelligence and data centers play in our community? And the other questions, most importantly, what kind of Palm Coast are we leaving for the next generation? So joining me today is Jimmy Hengy, candidate for Palm Coast City Council District 2. And Jimmy brings more than 4 decades of business experience and has worked closely with economic development efforts throughout his career. Today we'll discuss his vision for Palm Coast and the issues facing our city. So, Jimmy, good morning and welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you here. So, tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your journey from business owner to candidate for city council.
Okay, well, I was born in Garden City, Detroit, but my first memories were of South Florida, of Hollywood specifically, where, attended preschool and through elementary, and then we actually moved to Fort Lauderdale, where I spent most of my time. And I graduated in 1979, and really just branched right out into the business world. I worked for a company called TSF Sportswear, where I, in a short period of time, rose to become the production manager. They did about $11 million a year in business. And I identified an unfilled niche within the industry, and I actually, in 1985, started my own company. And we were a contract screen printing company. We did work for a lot of major retail stores and corporate accounts and so on and so forth. And did that through 2001, where I actually sold the business and moved to Sebring, Florida, and purchased a company called the Great Atlantic and Pacific T-shirt Company.
Oh, wow.
Which was a mixture of a retail store and a production facility. And it was in historic downtown Sebring. And that's where I got in to know, Sebring's population at the time was just 10,000 people. So small town, quaint, very controlled growth. I knew the mayor and council members there, and was familiar with the operations of the city and stuff, and I never really had time to get involved because, being in business, takes more than 40 hours a week running a business. And stayed in Sebring through 2019. The downturn was really detrimental, being in a small city and, that real estate bust and stuff. It was difficult to do business in that small town. Sebring was rated one of the poorest cities in the state of Florida, at the time.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's mainly, a retirement community. And, in the winter months, it's snowbird, population tripled in the winter months. So in business, you would, make your money in the wintertime, and in the summertime, you'd play golf or go fishing and so on and so forth. Being a small town, having a retail operation there, the downturn, and really took a toll. And so I ended up selling, in Sebring, and moved back to Fort Lauderdale. It was a little, better business environment. And stayed there through just last year, 2025, retired from business. We scouted northern Florida from Port Orange to DeLand, Deltona, the whole area for our final resting place, and fell in love with Palm Coast, the clean streets and the quaintness of it, cleanliness, it really attracted us here. And also compared to a lot of other places, the affordability. So
well, I guess compared to other places, affordability.
and
'Cause, a lot of people are still screaming, "What's too expensive to live here?" But,
So to some,
Right.
there's many communities that are too expensive for my family to live in. That's Florida, or that's many states. In general, you have your areas that are affordable and the ones that are for people with a higher income.
so what made you decide that now was the right time to run for Palm Coast City Council? How do you just all of a sudden just jump in a race? Because you
Well,
came out of nowhere.
yeah,
I was like, I didn't think it was real. And
Well,
you just came out of like, here I am. I'm gonna do this.
yeah, I followed the council meetings on their YouTube site, so I was familiar with, some of the operations and stuff. And I actually had the opportunity to speak a couple times with Mayor Mike, and, following what had happened in the past and seeing the problems with the infrastructure, with roads and, the development, the rampant development. I mean, development is inevitable. It's going to happen.
So you're telling me you're retired, you moved here, and you started watching what was going on in the city where you live.
Well,
that is kind of cool.
yeah. So,
And a lot of people don't do that. They just come here and whatever. You really wanted to get engaged in the community and find out what was going on. So
I guess at the time, what attracted us was, the environment, the beauty of it. In our neighborhood, I live in the L section. One mid-morning, I see 10 turkeys walking across our front yard, which you don't see in South Florida, and then deer in the neighborhood and stuff. And it was really, really neat. And birds, down south, you don't hear birds chirping and stuff, it's just the noise and the overdevelopment and so on and so forth. And then, within a short period of time, watching the amount of land being cleared, for new development and stuff.
And you were like, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm like, it doesn't really make sense. I mean, yes, it is inevitable growth, as I said, but the amount of growth and so quick. And then also too, following next door, jobs, we really lack jobs in the area. So I'm thinking, well, all these houses being built and there's no jobs, how does it make sense? And, finding out that in past councils, there've been developers or real estate agents or builders and, seeing, their concerns, it seemed like it was more density for dollars than some kind of controlled growth that would move along with the ability for jobs.
What concerns you the most about the direction the city is heading?
Well, so the infrastructure, I mean, we hear a lot of complaints about, the water bills and the utility bills. And we know, every October it's going to go up by 4%. Evidently, the capacity of the utility department, specifically water, is just not there. Yeah, and I found out there's over 19,000 homes already approved. They call it in the queue, already approved for development. So, $330 million bond was just taken out to upgrade the water facilities. And I was told that that's not even going to handle the homes that are within the queue already. So tell me how that makes sense, to where you're now talking about a westward expansion with 22,000 additional homes, and wanting residents to help foot the bill, taxpayers, to help foot the bill
So that's
for the
concerning.
utilities.
So you get
Very
here.
concerning.
So here it is. You move to this quaint town
Yes.
that is beautiful. The turkeys are running across your front yard, and you're seeing deer, and you got birds, and of course, in South Florida, you don't have a lot of that. So you're all excited, and the next thing you know, you see, things being cleared.
Bulldozers and tractors.
Bulldozers are coming up, and you go, wait a minute, my turkey's going to disappear.
Right.
My deer's gone, and I need to figure out what's going on in my town. And all of a sudden, you're in the race. Am I summing it up?
But pretty much so, yeah. And seeing the other people that are vying for the position and some of their backgrounds, it told me that hey, there needs to be a change here. We need, a new direction and not so much just focus on, more homes, more homes. We hear the talk about homes for first responders and teachers and so on and so forth. And I thought, yes, hey, that's fine and well, but how many do we have here? Teachers and first responders, 19,000,
So what skills from your years in business do you believe will help you be an effective council member?
Well, managing a budget first and foremost, you have your revenue and you have your expenditures, and you're not going to last long if you spend more than you make. And also too, if you're not efficient, with your workforce, I think we need to, identify areas, especially now since, DeSantis, potentially, it's going to be on the ballot to do away with a portion of property taxes. So, that as a city, you got to be concerned about, tightening the belt and seeing where you can save and redirect money and so on and so forth.
What do you believe is the biggest challenge facing Palm Coast over the next 5 years?
One singular?
Well, okay.
There's a few.
There's a few.
Yeah. I think the main thing is the rampant overdevelopment. I think, that needs to be tempered a little bit. I'm for development, I'm for, jobs, which development brings jobs. Although, I have noticed that walking through the neighborhoods and seeing different job sites and stuff, it seems like a lot of the subcontractors are from out of this community. And to me, it seems like, if you're a local builder and you want to invest in the community,
you would think so.
You would think that you would hire within,
so.
So.
Okay, sounds like a little common sense. All right, guys, we got to take a break. Today's program is made possible by Great Eagle Strategies, Gerald Ministries, Church on the Rock, and Judah One Aviation. Don't go anywhere. Don't touch that dial. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the westward expansion, some infrastructure, and some flooding in Palm Coast, and see what Mr. Hengy has to say about it. Don't go anywhere. Don't touch that dial. Welcome back. You are listening to Today with Pastor Jay, and my highly esteemed guest is Jimmy Hengy. Just getting to meet him and know him for the first time. Didn't know anything about you, saw you kind of on social media. I always love interviewing people that I don't know anything about because I get to learn something new. And I'm like, who is this guy? And of course, it was people reach out and say, hey, Pastor Jay, will you have this guy on your show? So my show is open to anyone that want to come and sit in the hot seat. I like to call it the hot seat. So thank you for coming to sit in the hot seat.
Thank you for having me again.
Palm Coast leaders continue debating growth in the westward expansion as the city plans for future development. Infrastructure and flooding remain top concerns among residents, as you know. And Palm Coast is also investing heavily in utility and transportation improvements as growth continues. So let's talk about the westward expansion. What does responsible growth look like to you?
Well, managed, growth, infrastructure first, first and foremost, it's like, you build it and then you try to fill in the gaps. It doesn't, necessarily make sense to me. Also, in the past, developers have been responsible for the cost of the infrastructure.
That is true. In some places.
In fact, when Palm Coast was founded, doing research in the beginning by ITT, they had the infrastructure there, it was already pre-planned. They had the sewers and the treatment plants and so on and so forth before the development began. Makes perfect sense. The roads were in place and so on and so forth. So I would like to see, development. I don't know the need for high density development. Usually places like Orlando or Jacksonville, they have the affordable high density because you have a bigger workforce and you want to make it, more commutable for that workforce to get to jobs and so on and so forth. And Palm Coast doesn't have that. So to me, high density development doesn't make sense. Although I would like to see more developments like Grand Haven, more, of a upper scale, type community that's well kept and well maintained, which in turn would provide more service jobs. They say, with the AI, coming into play, a lot of the, executive type positions, are being taken over, by AI. They say the next round of the millionaire class are going to be coming from the service industry, the HVAC people, the plumbers.
Oh, I believe it.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
believe it. I mean,
My son has a air conditioning, actually works for an air conditioning company in Sebastian, and he, makes over $100,000 a year, in his position, which, those type of jobs would be, very beneficial for Palm Coast and Flagler County. So again, I'm not against the westward development, but I think it could be rethought, and not so much high density, but more space and,
well, let's talk about the flooding, because that remains a major concern. And just recently, I can't remember, I was in DC or something, and my daughter sent me some pictures. She had no idea the amount of flooding that she's going to have on her road. She just recently purchased her house less than a year ago.
Okay.
And when you start to see sea-doos going down the road, that is residential areas and all that, you're going, so do you have solutions for these things?
So, right off the top of my head, no, I would need to know more of the mechanics, in the flood area. I know that, they have the drainage ditches that some of them work well, some of them don't. My experience in Florida, everywhere has flooding and issues with flooding. I mean, our elevation, we're not that much higher above sea level. So, flooding has been an issue in all the different communities that I live in. I see them maintaining, the drainage areas and stuff, but have to get with the wastewater engineering department and see, what their direction is and what their thoughts and plans are for addressing it. It is concerning.
It's very concerning.
Yeah.
But how do we protect, or I should say balance, protecting the quality of life while accommodating future growth? Because growth is inevitable. We're going to have growth.
It is inevitable.
So how do we balance protecting the quality of life?
Well, it's a good question. I would say it would go hand in hand with the type of development. It would go hand in hand with the type of jobs again also. And then it would be, possibly purchasing more green spaces, to allow the continued beauty of Palm Coast. Part of that, is the
reason why you moved here.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Palm Coast residents often express concern about traffic congestion. I remember you could get across town in no time flat. Now, I mean, it's just traffic everywhere.
It is. It is. I think that all of our commercial businesses are located along 100 or along Palm Coast Parkway, where you have everybody from the outskirts coming in and congregating in those areas because that's where the shopping's at. I think more commercial development possibly on the north end of Palm Coast, so that there's quite a few residents there. And also there's those new developments that are just west of US 1 that are traveling to the same area to do your shopping. Where I think if we brought some commercial opportunities out in the northern end, it would alleviate some of that downtown traffic.
Oh, that makes sense.
And also too, coming from South Florida, traffic here is, even when it's busy, it's easy compared to certain areas. I mean,
but still here are the pains of those that live here, because, it is definitely something else. Well, Palm Coast recently approved zoning changes that allow data centers in several commercial and industrial districts. While city leaders have also discussed studying their long-term impacts, right, and potential regulations, officials emphasize that Palm Coast current town center project is not a massive AI hyperscale facility, but debate continues regarding future data center development. Affordable housing, job creation, and government spending continue to be major concerns among residents. Palm Coast. So what are your thoughts on bringing data centers into our community?
Concerned about, the cable landing center that's being developed right now is not so much, from my understanding, is not so much the same as a data center. It does require some water, but from my understanding, it's reclaimed or recycled water that they're going to be using. But some of the stories I hear about actual data centers are concerning. The noise, the heat, the water consumption.
Do you
I
see
don't
any
know.
benefits from the data center?
Well, from my understanding, I don't think they create a whole lot of jobs. I don't know why they would have to be located within, city boundaries. I mean, there's so much
That makes sense.
open sense westward or open space, westward.
Right. Do you believe that the city itself should establish stricter regulations before approving future AR related facilities?
Absolutely, absolutely. Data facilities are relatively new, so there's not a lot of
I mean, how are we going
history
to have these things require a huge amount of water consumption for cooling
and power.
and power? How are we going to do that?
Yeah, we don't have enough water as it is now. So, again, when all else fails, common sense prevails, so we're going to apply a measure of common sense to some of these things. And I understand that, it may be, a tax, revenue source for the city, but it's almost like selling your soul for $1,
Makes sense.
Yeah.
All right, we got to take another break. Don't go anywhere, guys. Don't touch that dial. When you come back, we're still going to be talking about Jimmy Hengy. I'm getting it right. And we're going to talk a little bit about maybe taxes, the budget, jobs, economics. We only got a few minutes left, so don't go anywhere. Don't touch that dial.
Hope I'm doing okay.
You're doing fine. You people are watching you. So just, you know what I always tell people? Be your authentic self. If you can just be your authentic self, that's what's important. All right, you ready? Welcome back. Welcome back. We're continuing this conversation talking to Jimmy Hengy. And there's so much going on that I'm trying to pack in this short amount of time, of course. And, I appreciate you coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, speaking with me today, because this is a bold move. You must have really seen something to kind of go, yes, I'm retired, but I'm running for office. It must have been that important to you.
Growing up in Fort Lauderdale, when I first moved there in the early mid 60s, it was farmland and cow pastures, open spaces. I mean,
So what do you say to your critics that say you haven't been here long enough?
Well, again, people like to say, oh, you've only been here 1 year, but there's 365 days in a year. That's, if you can't figure out some of the problems in the area that you live in 365 days, well then, maybe you don't have the potential to address those. My experience before in Sebring, they had a quote good old boy network. And they were, people that were.
Do you see that going on here? The Good
Well,
Old Boy Network?
I haven't firsthand
Okay, good.
seen it, but I've experienced it, and I know it happens in a lot of different areas. You got people that are, either developers or landowners or long-term, business owners that have a clique, going together, and it seems like, some of the decisions that are made in areas directly, impact their respective businesses and stuff. And not that I'm not calling it corrupt or anything, but it's stuff that, seems to help just a few instead of the many. So
Residents are always concerned about property taxes and government spending. What's your philosophy concerning taxes?
evil.
Oh, okay.
But necessary.
Okay,
You
evil
know?
but necessary.
So there are core things that taxes, do benefit, our schools and our first responders and stuff like that. Those are necessities, and local government and utilities and, different things that make our community work. It doesn't happen for free.
If you were to be elected, what would success look like at the end of your first term?
Fiscal responsibility, a balanced budget with the city, not going into debt, and also taming some of the rampant overdevelopment. I want to point out, for sure, I'm not against development. It's going to happen, and we need it to happen. Economic growth, depends on development, but we need to be smart about it. So I think, at the end of my first term, I would like to see that that we have a well thought out mission statement for Palm Coast. What do we want to be? What type of community?
Do you think Palm Coast is doing enough to encourage workforce housing?
Well, I think they're doing a lot to encourage workforce housing, but the problem is we have the workforce, we have people here, but we don't have the jobs. So it's like putting the cart before the horse.
Right.
I think we need to really focus on what type of jobs, what kind of industries we want here. I don't think we want, major manufacturing. We don't probably light manufacturing, something tech oriented. We are part of the Space Coast, and that seems to be, the direction, the future growth. So I think, smart, well planned out businesses that, have the potential to grow and be a long-term part of the community.
Well, the show is called Today with Pastor Jay, not just because it's catchy, because I am a pastor.
Yes.
Do you believe there's a place for faith in public service? And I ask that because just recently people have been, just talking about it. In years past, people talk about praying at, meetings. Do you think there's a place for faith in public service?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just like I believe there's a place for faith in schools. When we, grew up, we'd say the Pledge of Allegiance and, there wasn't so much, any one particular faith in school, but we were founded one nation under God, so yeah. I liked that the city council has a moment of silence. Everybody can do their own, individual prayer and yeah, I believe, there's many different faiths out there. So I don't think that, any one particular faith could be,
Right. What would you want people to remember about you long after the campaign signs are down and the election is over? What would you want them to know about Mr. Jimmy
well,
Hengy?
that, I'm not a politician. I'm a neighbor, I'm a resident. This is our final place, resting place, if you will. I would like to see, it maintain the type of city that attracted us here.
That sounds good. And how can people learn more about you, your campaign?
My website, jimmyhengy.com, has got some information on there. Also, I have a Facebook page that we're going to start, contributing more to.
Okay.
And then also look for me at some of the city council meetings and stuff.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you so very much for
Thank you
spending
very
this
much for
time
having
with
me.
me. Palm Coast stands at an important crossroads. The decisions made today regarding growth, infrastructure, housing, economic development, and technology will shape the city for generations to come. So whether you agree or disagree on policy, one thing is certain: informed citizens create stronger communities. I want to thank Jimmy Hengy for joining us today and sharing his vision for Palm Coast's future. So I'll leave this with you. Yesterday is gone. Tomorrow isn't promised. What are you going to do today? Well, who are you going to vote for, Palm Coast? That's more of the question, right? God bless you. Until next time, have a wonderful and beautiful day.
Thank you.